For 26 years, Detective David Lawson lived with one ghost, the man who got away. Then, one quiet morning while scrolling through his daughter's wedding photos, the ghost looked right back at him. From that moment, the past he'd buried came clawing out of the ground, and with it, the truth about a murder he thought he'd left behind. Music rises. Slow piano with low heartbeat-like pulse. David Lawson had once been one of Portland's best homicide detectives. Sharp, meticulous, and relentless. But after 30 years of chasing darkness, he'd hung up his badge. A stroke had slowed him down, and his wife, Margaret, made him promise he'd never reopen another file. He kept that promise for 7 years. Until that Sunday morning, when one photo changed everything. David had been alone in his study, cleaning out old boxes of family pictures. His daughter Emily, newly married, had sent him a digital album of her wedding 3 years earlier. He clicked through, smiling at the laughter, the dancing, the joy. Then one image stopped him cold. Behind the newlyweds, half hidden near the fountain, stood a man in a gray suit. His head turned slightly, his mouth curved in a faint smirk, and on his left temple, a long, thin scar. David's hand trembled on the mouse. He'd seen that scar before, in 1997, on the face of a murderer named Robert Hale. The Fairview Forest murder had haunted David for decades. A young woman named Lisa Monroe, just 24, was found buried in shallow mud near a campground. The only suspect, a drifter named Robert Hale, had disappeared 2 days after the killing. When floods hit the Fairview River, Hale's truck was found crushed downstream. No body, no trace. The department closed the case, presumed dead. But David never believed it. He'd spent months combing that river, searching for bones that never surfaced. Even after retirement, he still saw Lisa's photograph on his desk, a promise he'd failed to keep. And now, 26 years later, there he was, alive, smiling behind David's daughter. David zoomed in on the image until the pixels blurred. The scar was identical. The eyes, cold, deliberate, the same ones that used to stare from the interrogation chair. He checked the metadata. The photo was untouched, real. Still, he needed confirmation. He printed it, grabbed his magnifier, and compared it to the old police sketch he'd kept all these years. Perfect match. He called Emily, his voice tight. "Sweetheart, who's this man in the background, the one in the gray suit?" Emily laughed softly. "Oh, him. That's Uncle Rob. Ben's uncle." "Why, Uncle Rob?" David's pulse thudded in his ears. Robert Hale, Rob, was standing at his daughter's wedding, under a different last name. That night, David couldn't sleep. He dug out the old Fairview Forest file box, the one Margaret told him to throw away years ago. He spread it open across the dining table. Crime scene photos, fingerprints, sketches, reports. Everything that had once consumed his life. The more he stared at Hale's mugshot, the more certain he became. Same angular jaw, same lazy right eyelid, same scar. He printed every wedding photo again, this time enlarging the man's figure. He appeared in 5 shots total, always at the edges, never facing the camera fully, always watching. And in one photo he wasn't smiling. He was staring straight at the lens, straight at David. The next morning, David visited Emily and Ben. Over coffee, he asked as casually as he could manage. "So, tell me more about Ben's Uncle Rob." Ben shrugged. "He's kind of private. Lives up in Washington. Dad said they grew up in Idaho, but Rob doesn't like talking about the past. Ever notice that scar on his temple?" Ben nodded. "Yeah. He said he got it in a bar fight back in the day." David's stomach turned. Robert Hale had claimed the same thing, 26 years earlier. That night, David reopened the case file digitally. He used an old contact in the department to run the wedding image through facial recognition software. Result: 97% match. Robert Hale wasn't dead. He was alive, living under a new name. David drove to the Portland precinct and found his old partner, Detective Ray Mendoza. Ray greeted him with a grin. "Dave Lawson, the legend himself. Thought you were fishing these days." David laid the photo on the desk. "Take a look." Ray leaned forward. "That's him." "You're kidding." "I wish I was." "That's Robert Hale. He was at my daughter's wedding." Ray's expression hardened. "We buried that case decades ago." "Maybe too soon," David said quietly. They reopened the digital file, compared the photos, ran side-by-side biometric mapping. "Same man. Older. Alive." Ray exhaled. "You realize this reopens a homicide investigation. The moment we confirm his identity, everything changes." David nodded. "Good. Let's change it." They tracked the gray van visible in one of the wedding shots. License plate registered to Robert Hanley, Vancouver, Washington. Different name, same initials. Perfect cover. When they arrived at the address, a small woodworking shop off a rural road, David's heart pounded like it hadn't in years. The bell above the door jingled. Sawdust hung in the air. Then a man stepped out from behind the counter. White hair, trimmed beard, glasses. Older but unmistakable. The scar was there. David froze. "Robert Hale." The man smiled faintly. "Sorry, don't know that name." "Funny," David said. "I remember it well." The man's eyes flicked toward the back exit. Then he ran. The shop door burst open. David and Ray sprinted after him through the lot, past lumber piles and rusted trucks. Rain slicked the ground. Hale darted into the woods. By the time backup arrived, he was gone, swallowed by trees and fog. All they found were footprints ending at the riverbank and a set of keys half buried in mud. Ray kicked a stone. 60 years old, and he outran 2 cops. David stared at the rushing water. He knows these woods. He's been hiding here a long time. Back at the workshop, they searched the office. Inside a drawer, David found a faded newspaper clipping, the Fairview Forest murder. His own photo was circled in red ink, and scrawled beneath it in shaky handwriting, "You stopped looking too soon." Further investigation revealed a chilling pattern. Robert Hanley had moved across 6 states over 20 years: Oregon, Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, Utah, Washington. Each time a new town, a new alias. And near each location an unsolved disappearance. 2 cases matched Lisa Monroe's details exactly. Young women, campsites, shallow graves. David's chest tightened as the pattern unfolded. This wasn't a one-time crime. It was a chain, and he'd missed it. When he asked Emily again about her wedding, she mentioned something odd. "Dad, he didn't want his picture taken. Ben's cousin had to convince him to pose. Said cameras made him nervous." David whispered, "Because cameras see what people don't." David sat down with Ben that evening, his hands trembling. "Ben, I need the truth. How exactly is Uncle Rob related to you?" Ben frowned. "He was my dad's brother. I think he changed his name years ago. Ran away after some fight with their parents." David slid the old mugshot across the table. Ben's eyes widened. That's him. That's Uncle Rob." "Your uncle," David said slowly, "is a wanted murderer. He killed a woman named Lisa Monroe, and he's been hiding under your family's name." Ben's hand shook. "Then he stood beside my wife on our wedding day." Silence hung heavy between them. Weeks later, the FBI reopened the Fairview case officially. Agents searched Hale's workshop and recovered a discarded coffee cup. DNA analysis confirmed what David already knew. Robert Hale and Robert Hanley were the same man. He'd been alive all this time, living quietly, blending in, attending weddings, church picnics, even volunteering at shelters. To everyone else, he was a kind old craftsman. To David Lawson, he was the ghost that had never left. But before authorities could arrest him, he vanished again. Left behind his van, his clothes, his woodworking tools, everything but himself. It was as if he'd melted back into the earth. 3 months later, A forest ranger in the Olympic Mountains stumbled upon a small cabin buried deep in the woods. Inside were hundreds of photographs, all of strangers. Weddings, picnics, family reunions. Every image was perfectly framed, each subject smiling. Pinned in the center of the wall was one photograph, Emily's wedding, the same one David had found. And beneath it, written in trembling pen, "She looks just like Lisa." David was there when agents cleared the cabin. He stood silently, staring at that note, the handwriting familiar, like a whisper from the past. Then the lead agent handed him a file. "Sir, you might want to see this." The metadata from the wedding photo had been analyzed. Showed something impossible. The photo had been digitally modified 2 days after the wedding. Not by the photographer, not by Emily or Ben. Someone had inserted the man in gray. Someone wanted David to see him. He looked up at the trees beyond the cabin and felt the weight of unseen eyes. "Ray," he murmured. "What if Hale didn't come back?" Ray frowned. "What do you mean?" David's voice dropped. "What if he never left, and someone else wants me to think he did?" Lightning cracked across the sky. The sound echoed through the forest like a warning. That night, David sat in his study again, staring at the photo that started it all. The pixels seemed to shimmer under the lamplight, the face in gray, half smiling, half shadow. He zoomed in once more, and for a fleeting second he thought the image blinked. He blinked back and the screen went black. Then slowly words appeared where the photo had been. "You stopped looking too soon." David's heart pounded, because that message wasn't typed. It was carved, pixel by pixel, into the photo itself.